The original Saints Row was considered to be a massive success when it was first released in 2006, despite the fact the game was an Xbox 360 exclusive title. Not only did the game sell over 500,000 copies worldwide, it also managed to get platinum hits for the console as well, and made a profit for both THQ and Volition. However, the game hasn't aged like fine wine nowadays. Don't get me wrong, the game itself had its fair share of moments that held up surprisingly well, like its story, characters, and writing, but in terms of gameplay, the game still needed to be ironed out before they reached its true potential. A few graphical upgrades, new designs to the city, plus some little goodies, and you could have yourself a cult classic hit. Well, it seemed both THQ and Volition took notes of that because a couple of years later, Saints Row 2 was released, and, well, that's why we're here. Ladies and gentlemen, saints and sinners, join me as we make a grand return to Stillwater and go back to the streets of Saints Row. 2008 was a groundbreaking year for gaming. With the release of AAA title games such as Grand Theft Auto 4, Metal Gear Solid 4, Fallout 3, and Super Smash Bros. Brawl was released with unanimous critical acclaim and ended up receiving tons of Game of the Year awards from media outlets. It was a busy year overall, and we had a ton of more games coming along the way as well. During the same time as those games were coming out, or soon to be coming out anyway, THQ and Volition once again made a return with their game that, while not as well received as those games I mentioned, was well known for ending the 2008 year of gaming in the loudest way they possibly can. I remember seeing trailers for the game that just got me so hyped up that I thought what I was getting was going to be a masterpiece, ranging from the game's stories trailers to those weirdly hilarious trailers starring Gary Busey. Yeah, I'm not kidding, and people say that Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk was like a crowning moment in gaming history. Regardless though, I was excited for the game. I knew what I was getting was going to be amazing, and that's saying a lot since around that same time, Grand Theft Auto 4 was out, and, well, it didn't really quite click with many people when it was out. So Saints Row 2 literally went out of the way to ridicule GTA 4, mocking its replay value and lack of content for players to do in the game.
Would you rather go bowling or steal a septic truck and spray loads of sewage on pedestrians?
Now, of course, trying to poke fun at GTA nowadays is like trying to dig your own grave. I mean, if Ubisoft can teach us anything, it's how to not make fun of GTA while shooting yourself in the foot. Yeah, I bet this Watch Dogs ad aged well. Saints Row 2 was marketed heavily when it was announced, and the game managed to sell over 2 million units around the end of the year, plus being met with positive reviews by critics and fans alike. Saints Row 2 was a huge hit, and even after a decade, still remains as the best game in the series by many people. And that's quite an achievement too, since Saints Row 2 was released only a few months after the release of GTA 4, a game that managed to overthrow Saints Row 2 by a landslide due to its sales. Though some people still classify Saints Row 2 to be the better game due to its content, story, characters, and gameplay. While developing Saints Row 2, Volition wanted to create an identity for the series since many people constantly compared the first Saints Row game to Grand Theft Auto. And while Saints Row 2 was compared to GTA 4, since both games were released around the same time, it did show signs of opportunity for some competition. According to the game's lead producer, Greg Donovan, he stated that GTA 4 was obviously going for a more realistic direction, which opened up the idea of turning Saints Row 2 into a more over-the-top direction with its gameplay, being more in the lines of being unrealistic and wacky, as we'll discuss later. Now, they didn't really go too crazy with this direction until the next game in the series, in which they had some more creative ideas, but it was pretty clear that this would be the route that Saints Row will be heading towards. With that said, Saints Row 2 was still somewhat compared to GTA, despite the identity change, but that didn't stop Volition from at least trying to make Saints Row feel unique and innovative with this new direction. Sure, you don't have dildo bats, musk launchers, aliens, and superpowers yet, but then again, Saints Row 2 doesn't really need those kinds of things to make it feel like it's going over the top. I know a lot of people can't stand it when someone says that SR2 is over the top, but come on, man. You can't sit here and tell me that this is realistic. Hell, Saints Row 1 was probably the most realistic game in the series, and even that game had some over-the-top action stuff as well from time to time. Like Angelo jumping the bridge or blowing up his plane at the end of the Cornelius' mission. And like I said, this isn't the point where the series went completely balls to the walls, but you can't argue and say that it sort of did lead to this moment. Also, as stated before, this video will be spoiler heavy for Saints Row 2, so if you haven't played the game, I strongly recommend you skip ahead to this part of the video. Trust me, it's something you might want to skip out on since there's a lot of important stuff in the game that you need to experience. With that said, let's talk about Saints Row 2. 2 years have passed since the boat explosion in Saints Row 1. William Hughes is dead, but for some reason you miraculously survived. However, you wake up inside a prison island where you meet Carlos, an inmate that literally got himself stabbed in the stomach just for him to meet you and plans to escape out of the prison. As you and Carlos escaped, you notice that Stillwater has changed. No longer just being an urban, struggling city thanks to a company named Ultor. Originally a clothing company before they became an actual organization, Ultor first started controlling Saints Row and is currently planning on wanting to re-amp Stillwater in the future. Carlos also explains that while the boss was gone, the 3rd Street Saints disbanded with some of the members either getting killed off or arrested by Troy Bradshaw, a former member turned undercover cop after the first game. Well, now he became promoted to Chief of Staff, but he also uses the powers to protect the Saints as opposed to tormenting them. Meanwhile, information about Dex, Julius, and Johnny Gad are unknown for now. Speaking of Johnny, however, the boss notices that Gad is currently on trial for murdering 300 people. However, with the statute of limitations, it probably should have been closer to 250. As Johnny's about to get the death sentence, you show up and bust him out. From there, you meet up with Aisha again, who's still currently dating Johnny. You and Gat decided to reform the Saints again, but since all of the original members are either dead or busted, you need to start from scratch. You set up shop at an old abandoned mission house and recruit 3 new members along the way. Carlos offers to join the Saints, but we're also introduced to Pierce and Shondi. Once everything is in motion, the Saints are reformed, and you take control of the gang now. There are 3 new gangs running around the streets of Stillwater though, the Ronin, the Brotherhood, and the Sons of Samedi. With 3 new lieutenants on your side, Pierce is in charge of the Ronin, Shondi, to her dismay, is in charge of the Sons of Samedi, and Carlos is in charge of the Brotherhood. Once you've got your lieutenants set up, it's time we go ahead and drive the gangs out of Stillwater yet again. Much like last time, the game offers you to take out 3 gangs in any order you like, so I'm going to go ahead and go by the order that I played in. The Sons of Samedi are well known for pushing drugs all over the city of Stillwater, and the Saints are planning on stealing their business from them and run into the ground. For the most part, this results in the Saints destroying drug labs while also producing their own drugs. The drugs the Samedi are selling are called Lobodust, but you smoke it through a light bulb. You know, it's kind of sad that a straight-edge person tells you that name makes no sense. The group is being run by the General. We don't know a lot about the General besides the fact that he's not really as much of a hothead compared to other gang leaders. He's laid back and chill, but also knows when things start to get rough. We also have Mr. Sunshine, who is the Samedi's right-hand man. He is experienced in voodooism and even has some powers as well, like throwing you around when you fight him. Or how when you kill him, he keeps on coming back to life unless you cut off his head. And lastly, we have DJ Veteran Child, and the DJ is no name either. He's actually one of the DJs of the game's radio stations, which I'll explain more later on. He only shows up for a couple of missions before you kill him after he kidnaps Shondi. With that said, I personally do find the Samedi to be my least favorite gang in the game, to be honest. Besides their mystic voodoo culture, the Samedi always kind of struck me as a poor man's Los Carnales. We don't know a whole lot about the gang or any of their members, and plus there's nothing really dramatic that happens in the story. The closest we got was Shondi's kidnapping and killing off the General. I do like the boss fights, like with the General, Veteran Child, and Mr. Sunshine, but that's about it. Shondi herself doesn't really do anything amazing at all in the plot as well. She's pretty much a stoner who just feeds you information and gets kidnapped. She was able to hack into security cameras though, so I guess that's something. Besides that, nothing truly remarkable happens in the story, making this my least favorite, and honestly, I kind of recommend you do this first, just to get it out of the way. The Ronin controls the suburban area of Stillwater and are well known for their gambling, prostitution, protection rackets, and street racing. They're pretty much a mixture between the Vice Kings and the West Side Rollers, for both of those things combined. With Pierce in charge, he usually comes up with more strategic plans for the Saints to take out the Ronin. But then you later realize that Gad is in the storyline too, and in typical Johnny Gad fashion, his solution is just to go around and murder everyone he sees and destroy whatever property around him. The Saints would rob the Ronin's casino, stealing all their cash in the process. The Ronin are also working side by side with Ultor, the corporation we talked about earlier before, and pays the Ronin to protect them. The leader of the gang is Shogo Akuchi, being set in charge of running things in Stillwater. Known for having a cocky attitude, and with the voice of Sasuke Uchiha, he thinks the Saints are no big deal at all whatsoever. Events start to unfold though, as Junichi, the right-hand man, ends up killing Aisha after trying to ambush you and Gad. Gad even got fatally injured in the process. Despite all of that, however, Kazuo Akuchi, aka the Oyabun and the father of Shogo, notices that Shogo lacks the essence of becoming a proper leader of a gang, which results in him coming to America and teaching Shogo how to lead. One thing that's very noteworthy is that Kazuo seems to be more fond of Junichi than he is with Shogo, his actual son. After you kill Junichi, Kazuo ends up feeling very sad about Junichi's death and disappointed that he's now instead stuck with his son. He even goes out of his way to ridicule and insult him when Dane Vogel, the chairman of the board for Ultor, and the Ronin cut ties with one another. Feeling upset over his father's disappointment and wanting to make it up to him, Shogo decided to take out the Saints once and for all at Aisha's funeral. Before I go any further, I just want to point out that this is without a doubt one of, if not the best cutscene in the entire game. After you kill the Ronin, Gat just beats the holy hell out of Shogo just before deciding to bury him alive. What's amazing is that the boss doesn't say a single word in this cutscene, and the only piece of dialogue we got is from Gat and Shogo. And yes, the boss does actually have a voice now. This was something I forgot to bring up in my Saints Row 1 video, but I was not a big fan of the silent protagonist that all the other video games are doing around this time. They only got one piece of dialogue after every final gang mission, but that's about it. Here though, it gives the boss a much more fitting personality. It makes them feel less generic in a way. Their always smart-ass comments and pissed-off attitude definitely seems fitting for a leader of a street gang after all. I'm sorry for rambling on about that really quick. I just had to let that out because this scene here works wonders because of how silent they are. After beating the shit out of Shogo, they literally bury him alive, and it's pretty clear that Shogo is dead. And all that's left is Kazuo Akuchi. We also get to see the return of Mr. Wong, who was the person who hired us to do one of the Hitman activities in Saints Row 1. After a quick war at the crypt, the boss and Kazuo decided to end this once and for all with a badass sword fight on a burning ship. This all ends with the boss jumping from the boat with Kazuo burning in the process. The Ronin storyline is easily my favorite of the bunch. I love the chemistry between the boss and Gat due to their long-time personal history with each other, and as sad as Aisha's death was, it completely showed a change of personality with Gad. A man who went from being a snarky tough but at times goofball into a rampaging psychopathic murder machine. We also get the chance to learn about the newcomer Pierce Washington, a man who is known for trying to be strategic but ends up coming off as a dork in a sense. He sort of ends up becoming a goofball from time to time and ends up showcasing that attitude more as the series goes on. With that said though, he's so loyal enough to run the Saints and proves that he can be able to take the job personally. Assuming you play this story first as well, it serves as a great introduction for Dane Vogel, who we will learn much more later on in the game. But he's a man with passion when it comes between the Ronin. When he cuts ties with them, he actually helps out the Saints in one mission, giving the boss information on how to do more damage to the Ronin before leaving. Overall, this was an excellent story and something that I'm sure no one will simply want to miss. A perfect combination of drama and action in the best way possible. The final gang I decided to take out was the Brotherhood. They're a group famously known for their monster trucks, demolition derbies, and fascination with tattoos and heavy metal music. Recently, they've been trading weapons that are sent from overseas. Besides that, we also get a glimpse of the leader Mero, who, unlike other gang leaders, actually tries to cut a deal with the Saints. In fact, the opening mission has you teaming up with Mero to escape from the Stillwater underground cave. Once you escape, you and Mero discuss the deal. Mero offers a 20-80 deal, with the Saints only getting the 20 while the Brotherhood gets the rest. However, that deal means jack shit to the Saints, since it's a 20-80 deal and the Saints aren't getting enough out of the action. That means the Saints and the Brotherhood go into war. Carlos is in charge of the planning and ideas, but never comes up with any ideas at all on how to take out the Brotherhood. This puts the boss at a really tough disadvantage, since without any leads, the gang can't do anything to destroy the Brotherhood. So when desperate time calls for desperate measures, the boss decides to reinvent Mero's face with acid. From here on out, the rest of the story just becomes one game of who wants to die next. Carlos ends up being scraped off the streets by the Brotherhood before the boss can rescue Carlos and puts a bullet in his head. In retaliation, they kill Jessica by stuffing her inside the trunk of a car and getting squashed by Mero's monster truck. They torment Donnie for a bit, returning after the events with the Rollers in Saints Row 1 by having him rig bombs in the Brotherhood's car and injure Matt, the lead guitarist and singer for a band called the Fedox, and serves as Mero's tattoo artist. The Brotherhood has no second in command, or at least from my knowledge, compared to the other gangs in the game. Mero is just the one leading the charge throughout the entire story, since the other members are dead or just pushed aside by the boss. He even strikes a deal with Dane Vogel to get his crewmates out of prison to ambush the Saints, before being sabotaged and Ultor cutting ties with Mero. However, unlike with Shogo and the Ronin, their departure was more threatening, if you will.
Your security guards look more like a private army.
After you steal Mero's weapons, you have one more final showdown with him before putting a bullet in his head, ending the Brotherhood as a whole. The story here pretty much focuses on the same topics like with the Ronin, in which the two gangs just try to get payback on one another for killing off their members. However, I feel like it's less impactful here. I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but I seriously didn't feel that emotional when Carlos died. I know it's a pivotal moment in the story and also one of the most dramatic parts in the game, and I can't argue about the fact that this scene was bone-chilling. However, I seriously did not care for Carlos as a character since he never really did anything useful besides helping you bust out of prison in the opening mission. If we had more moments with Carlos like his interaction in the story, then I probably would have felt a lot more emotional. But instead, after Carlos' death, it's just Pierce and Shondi helping the boss out with trying to stop the Brotherhood. And I knew it was a dead giveaway that Carlos was going to die when he didn't even show up in the Ronin and Samedi cutscenes throughout the game, assuming he didn't do the Brotherhood mission first anyway. Now that we've finally gained control of Stillwater, the Saints are back and better than ever under new leadership. However, there's still some issues that needed to be sorted out. True, we did wipe all of the gangs out of Stillwater, but there's one thing that's out to eradicate the Saints once and for all. Normally, in the past game, once you took over Stillwater, you had a couple of extra missions before the ending cutscene played. Things are different this time around, as now Ultor is planning on getting rid of the Saints once and for all, to reinvent Stillwater from being a busted down gang city to a more pleasant city to explore and visit, and thus the battle with Ultor begins. Dane hosts a very special press conference describing how exactly he wants Ultor to get rid of all the crimes around the city of Stillwater and increase the population of the city. A wave of Masako team soon comes in, storming into the nightclub where the boss is at, currently drinking and trying to flirt with this bartender. However, a shootout happens and the boss escapes, with the rest of the gang meeting up at a restaurant. You and Get infiltrate the Ultor pyramid underground and destroy it, putting Dane at a disadvantage of almost getting fired. The next mission has you crashing a boat party that may have been sent by Dane Vocal as he stands in his office watching all of this happen. Those casualties on the boat, by the way, are the people who threatened to fire Dane. One final showdown occurs as Gat plans on one to assassinate Dane until he gets compromised, causing Dane to hide out in his office at the Ultor building. After you make it inside, he starts bragging about how he's the Saints' #1 fan before... The story for Saints Row 1 is easily, without a doubt, the best the series has done. Not only is the writing superb, but also explores a bit more into the characters we already knew from the first game, but also gives the new characters their time to shine. The boss is one hell of a badass, going out of their way into doing anything they want since they're the leader of the Saints now. No longer living in the shadows of Julius and the other members. Johnny Gat ends up being more dangerous, especially with Aisha's death, and proves that he really is not a man to mess with. The new lieutenants, Pierce, Carlos, and Shondi, are all right. Pierce comes off as a whiny baby whenever he doesn't get what he wants, and it does come off as kind of annoying. Despite this, he's so loyal enough and even offers the chance to help the boss out with other stuff that doesn't really need to involve him. Also, he has a great taste in music. I can't get So Sick by Neo out of my head now, thanks to this guy. Wonderful. And I'm so sick of love songs. So tired of tea. Shondi is pretty much a laid-back stoner who ends up kind of being a bumbling goofball from time to time. But like Pierce, she's still loyal to the gang and still does her job to help the boss out despite how useless she is at times. As for Carlos, well, I already brought it up earlier. I'm not a big fan of how they handled Carlos in this game. Besides escaping with the boss out of prison, he doesn't really do anything useful. nor is he a good lieutenant. The boss does try their best to shape up Carlos, but we unfortunately didn't get to see that since Carlos ends up getting killed early in the Brotherhood story. If we had more moments with Carlos, then I probably would have felt sad when he died. But I couldn't. Don't get me wrong, I'm upset that he died, but for a different reason. But a lot of you have been wondering what exactly happened to the original game. Besides Johnny and Aisha, where's Julius, Dex, and Troy? Well, as stated before, Troy serves as the chief of police, but he really doesn't do a whole lot. He usually appears in a couple of missions in the game and calls it a day. You can unlock him as a homie, but that's about it. However, we do have one true final mission in the game. When you get inside the Stillwater police station, you start gathering up tape recordings of Dex, Troy, and Julius. Apparently, Dex knew that Troy was an undercover cop, but instead of fighting him about it, he wanted to drop his flags and work for Ultor, which we will discuss later. Troy would then meet up with Julius in prison and try to convince both the boss and Gad to drop their flags as well, since he doesn't want to arrest his friends. However, we all know the rest of the story. Julius planted a bomb that would blow up the boat and cause the boss to enter a coma, while Johnny got put in jail for trying to assassinate Troy. We then get a phone call from Dex and tell us to meet him at the old church, aka the old Saints hideout. Instead, we ran into Julius and found out that it was a trap by Dex to take out both you and Julius. You were able to clear them out, and right when things felt like it was over...
Just like old times, player.
Yeah.
You kill Julius, putting an end to that storyline. I know this one took way longer than it did, but there were a lot of things for me to address here with the story. Possibly more than in Saints Row 1. And that's not even counting the 2 story-based DLC that were released right after the game as well. The first DLC was called Ultor Exposed, but it's nothing all that special. The boss helps out with someone named Tara, who served as a microbiologist with Ultor. Apparently, she believes that Ultor is currently behind some evil science scheme and is trying to get the news team to publish it, ranging from burying dead bodies and chemicals. This all backfires, though, as the news media tries to make it look like it was all Tara's fault, which pretty much meant this was all for nothing. Wonderful, thanks for wasting my time. The next DLC was called Corporate Warfare. This one is a lot more important, as it sort of serves as a continuation to the main game's plot. The new CEO of Ultor, Eric Griffin, requests the Saints' help from stopping Dex from killing him. When Dex's plan backfires, he just makes a run for it and leaves Stillwater, with the boss hoping that they will be able to kill Dex one day. Well, we'll get to that moment soon. Overall, the 2 story-based DLC missions are nothing more than boring. They're short and they don't have a lot of missions going forward, but it does offer new in-game content like weapons, clothes, and vehicles. Whew, that took way longer than I thought it would. Sorry for dragging this out, but there was so much stuff for me to talk about that I can guarantee you 100% will probably not follow into the next game at all whatsoever. But that's for another time. For now, though, we gotta continue on with this game, and don't worry, the gameplay portion of this video won't be as long. Hopefully. Now, if you've played Saints Row 1, then you probably already got the gist of what exactly Saints Row 2 is like. However, don't take that in a way you're thinking of right now, because I can guarantee you right now that is not the case. After noticing some of the issues that Saints Row 1 had, Volition decided to up the ante even more with Saints Row 2. Rather than just adding in 1 or 2 new things to the game, the devs revamped the game even more than ever, with a buttload of new things to do. For example, the city of Stillwater is bigger in size, with new locations for you to explore, like the hotel on Marina District, filled with beaches, restaurants, and even a pirate ship, or a museum district that includes coliseums. Plus, there's also the Stillwater Underground Cavern, where you can explore and find some nifty, interesting things in there. Stillwater in this game is a massive step up in the right direction. Not only does the city have more charm in its personality than compared to any other open world game, let alone Stillwater and Saints Row 1, not only do we have more places to visit, but the population of Stillwater adds into that charm and charisma the town seriously needed. Interesting characters you can run into the streets while walking or driving makes Stillwater more diverse than ever before. I know I would save this for the presentation side of things, but trust me, in a way, it also adds onto the gameplay portion as well. As for the daily dose of activities, most of them remain the same way as how they were in Saints Row 1, with a few new ones added in. New activities such as Septic Adventure, Fight Club, Crowd Control, Trailblazing, and Fuzz adds in that Saints Row wacky gameplay that we all know and love. And don't sit there and be in denial by saying that this game isn't wacky, because it is. You can't sit here and tell me running some old lady over with a car as she skyrockets into the air is classified as realistic, because it isn't. As for the new activities, they're really fun. Septic Avenger has you spray septic sewage at cars, people, buildings, anything that can get the town to smell that wonderful scent of disgusting bacteria. Fuzz has you dressed up as a police officer playing for a TV show, a la in the style of Cops, only except actually fun to do. You could take down a bunch of protesters just by lighting them on fire with a flamethrower for some extra footage, and, all that kind of stuff. I don't condone doing that, though, in real life. Please don't actually do that. Crowd control has you protecting a celebrity, or else they end up getting harassed by their fans. You are able to just whack them with a baseball bat for the most part, or you can throw them into a blade and watch them get sliced like a cartoon character. It's fucking awesome. I love it. Fight Club is, Fight Club. First rule of Fight Club is that we don't talk about Fight Club. I haven't even seen the movie, and even I know that's a very important rule. Trailblazing has you drive around while on fire in a hazmat suit, causing everyone to burn and cars to explode as you pass through checkpoints. While the frame rate drops a bit for this mode, at least for me, I still love it. Oh, and there's Heli Assault. It's boring as shit and easily my least favorite activity in the entire game. Just protect someone as they try to make stops around the city. That's it. Besides that, we do have some returning activities in Saints Row 1, and they do operate the same way as they did back in Saints Row 1. Well, with some minor changes to some. Insurance fraud now introduces an adrenaline meter that can help you stay up in the air for far longer than before and rack up some serious money. Yes, this is still the best activity in the entire series, and you all should play this activity first. Besides that, activities like Mayhem, Drug Trafficking, Escort, and Snatch all remain the same way. But we also gotta talk about Hitman and Chop Shop. Now, in Saints Row 1, both of these activities were easily the worst in the entire game. The whole gimmick behind those activities was nothing more than a waiting game, a dumb, boring, and a time waster of activities where all you do is drive around the city and just waiting for the target to show up. Well, in Saints Row 2, both of these activities have been improved greatly, especially Hitman. Now in Hitman, all you have to do is go to a location and just follow the contact's orders for that person to show up before you kill them. Chop Shop is mostly the same as how it was in Saints Row 1, but now finding cars is a lot easier since some of the cars can just respawn more often. Plus, you can still send these cars to the Chop Shop even if you already did it the first time. You don't get respect, but you get some additional cash along the way. These activities work wonders in this game, especially since you're going to be needing to grind up respect more often in this game than you did in Saints Row 1. To compensate with this, customization is also improved greatly as well. Your character can wear more clothing than ever, offering much more creativity and options for you to wear. Cars can be customized as well, and for the first time, you can even customize your own crib in game. When you do customize, you earn style points, which increase after every clothes you put on, any cars you customize, and any crib you upgrade. It's better than how it was back in Saints Row 1, where customization, while fun, also felt like a chore since you need to buy the higher clothes in order for you to gain extra respect points, and it's not like you get a lot out of it anyway. In Saints Row 2, no matter what outfit you wear, or its color, car color you picked, or the style of the crib, you can get style points, which increases the respect you get after completing an activity or even a diversion. Ah yes, diversions. There are many things to do in this game, depending on killing rival gang members to more ludicrous things like car surfing. Depending on how long you keep the combo, the more respect you can earn from doing these things. And trust me, you can get a lot of these without even noticing. It makes progression a bit easier than it was in the first game, while also being fun in the process. Alongside that, but combat has also seen a massive improvement as well. While it mostly operates the same way, having to shoot at your enemies, now you can be able to take them or civilians as human shields, making it easier for you to take less damage. And if you have an enemy gang member or a police officer as a hostage, the AI can be able to do nothing because they notice their own is being held captive, making you lay waste on enemies right in front of you. Melee combat has also been upgraded. After performing a 3-hit combo, you pretty much get a cool animation of your character doing a Superman punch, pimp smacking people, or just kicking them straight in the balls. The combat in this game is quite possibly the most refined and refreshed combat in the series. Oh, and you can also be able to pick up a stop sign and whack people with it. It's super cool. It's so refined that even enemies and pedestrians do the same thing, adding in on that colorful world building. And the game just heavily rewards you for doing these things as well. After completing a mission, activity, or diversion, you end up getting rewarded with respect and cash, but also some new items as well, like vehicles, weapons, clothing items, and even stuff like fighting styles, taunts, and compliments. Saints Row 2 heavily rewards you for doing so many things, for doing so much, almost feels like you earn those rewards. Besides activities and diversions, the return of CD collecting and tagging makes a comeback as well. Tagging has you spraying over a rival gang's graffiti, only instead of a QTE, you freely move the boss around while holding down the right trigger or R2 if you're playing the PS3 version, and make sure to keep the tag inside the green outline. With that said, you really don't get anything at all once you get all the tags besides an achievement, which is a shame really, since in Saints Row 1 you got unlimited sprinting when you found all the tags in the game. CD collecting still remains the same, however. With every 10 CDs you find, you unlock a new song to be added into your radio playlist. And since I'm the internet's busiest music nerd, more than Mr. Melonhead over here, I figured now would be the time to talk about the licensed music in the game. In Saints Row 1, you can tell that Volition was sort of on a tight budget with the soundtrack, which might explain why they had some lesser-known indie-type artists in their soundtrack. Since buying the rights to songs was expensive, Volition didn't have enough money to make a proper soundtrack that they wanted. With Saints Row 2, the budget doubled, having the devs buy more prominent and well-known songs, ranging from artists such as Deftones, Taking Back Sunday, Nas, The Late Big Pun, Run DMC, Mastodon, Dillinger Escape Plan, and Opeth, just to name a few. And it's actually a damn good soundtrack to boot. I love the DJ's interaction with the callers and the radio commercials they play. What makes the radio stations more interesting is how they change their perspective the more you play the game. For example, Veteran Child serves as the DJ for the Gen X radio station. However, once you kill him, the radio transforms into Ultor FM with a robotic DJ instead, though they still play the same music. And if you're halfway through the game, the station Easy FM changes into 105 The World and plays world music instead of easy listening. It's those nice, neat little changes in those radio stations that adds to that charm the city has. But one thing I am disappointed about, though, is that we don't have any songs from the Feed Dogs in the game. We always heard how much the Feed Dogs suck, but we haven't heard any of their songs at all. It's a shame because they could have done the same thing like how they did with Aisha in Saints Row 1. Make original music for the game and implement them into the radios. I'm not sure if it's due to time constraints, but it would have been awesome if they didn't make songs for the Feed Dogs like they did with Aisha. But quite possibly the biggest drawback from this is that you can no longer listen to your music on foot. That's a shame because I loved going around the city while having music playing in the background if I'm ever trying to complete a mission or just finding collectibles. So losing the option to listen to this amazing soundtrack on foot is kind of a shame, really. With that said, the music selection in this game is excellent and easily the best soundtrack the series has to offer. And the voice acting is still as spot on as ever, with some returning voice actors like Daniel Dai Kim as Gad and Keith David as Julius, but we do have some new actors like Neil Patrick Harris as the Veteran Child, Yuri Lowenthal as Shogo, and Michael Dorn as Mero. Though for some reason, despite the fact that some of the actors for the first game came back, Dex got replaced. Originally, he was voiced by Jeffrey Allen Quayum in the first game, but is instead voiced by Arif S. Kinshin, who also voices Pierce in this game too. Apparently, Volition couldn't find Jeffrey while making Saints Row 2, so they figured replacing him would be the most valuable option. But don't worry, I'm sure we'll see Jeffrey soon. Oh boy, we will see him soon indeed. Lastly, if we're discussing presentation, we have to talk about the game's graphics. And while I'm kind of split in between the character models a little bit, I can easily say that this is the best looking game in the series. The design of the building are revamped to fit more modern with the current situation Stillwater is going through. Plus, we were able to find more interesting things in the cities like secret areas and finally got the opportunity to fly and use water skis. I'm always a big fan of the bright neon lights used in the downtown district and appreciate the level of details for the city. Besides that, with a bigger budget, Volition heavily invested in wanting to make the production feel much better than the first game, which for the most part, they did. Saints Row 2 is a game that I absolutely love. Ever since I first played the game, I knew I was getting into a game that I would keep on playing for the rest of my life. From the moment I put the game inside my 360, I knew I was in for a hell of a ride. Saints Row 2 is easily classified as the best game in the entire Saints Row series, and there is no denying any of that. From the scope of the city, to the fantastic story and writing, to even the fun, fast-paced gameplay, Saints Row 2 is without a doubt not only the best game in the series, but also the best open world game ever made. I can strongly recommend if you have an Xbox 360 or a PS3 to try this game out for yourself. It's something you shouldn't skip out on. Now, I know a lot of people are also going to point out the PC port of the game that was released a couple of months later in 2009. Well, the thing is, the PC port of the game is actually terrible. Volition didn't work on the port, however. It was actually handed over to CD Projekt Black, or a localization center. But that port of the game is a complete mess, filled with technical problems, bugs, and glitches that were implemented in this version. I know the 360 and PS3 versions had their fair share of issues as well, like frame rate drops and all of that, but at least they functioned. The PC port ended up becoming a complete disaster, and is the main reason why Volition started working on PC versions of their games instead. With that said, one modder in the Saints Row community, Mike Watson, aka IO Ninja, worked on a mod that would run the game well on PC, called The Gentleman of the Robot, that was released shortly after the PC port was out. It worked wonders, so much that even Volition themselves offered Mike to work with them, which he reluctantly agreed to. Unfortunately, when THQ went down under and Volition was sent to a different publisher, they didn't have the source code for the PC port until 10 years after the PC port's release, with Mike Watson himself working to fix it. Tragically though, Mike Watson passed away in August of last year during his battle with cancer. It's something that so many people in the community felt upset over, since Mike was working his ass off into making this PC port worth it. Now, the PC port is currently worked on by people at Volition, who's continuing Mike's work where he left off. It's a shame that this happened, but from what I've heard, Mike was a great guy all around and really wanted to liven up to the series as much as he can. Thank you, Mike, for everything. I strongly recommend you play Saints Row 2. Honestly, this game might be the perfect definition of an open world game. So perfect, in fact, not any other open world game, new or old, would be able to top this one. I'm not kidding. Whether it's a new GTA, a new Watch Dogs, Assassin's Creed, or hell, even another Saints Row game, no matter how much I love it, cannot top the amount of credibility, creativity, and fun this game had. So please, do yourself a favor, go out to your local game store and find a copy of Saints Row 2. Download it online through the Xbox Marketplace or PlayStation Store. Order it through eBay or Amazon. Hell, emulate the damn game. I don't care. Just please play this game. You won't be missing out on much. It may not be a perfect game in general, but it does come close to it. Well, now that I got my love and appreciation for this game out of the way, I think it's about time we say goodbye to the streets of Stillwater. That's right, Saints Row 2 will be the final game to take place in this rundown city. But we do have another city to cause mayhem in. A city that is so boring, lifeless, and dull. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Join me next time as we enter the streets of Steelport with quite possibly the most successful but also polarizing Saints Row game to date, Saints Row the Third. Until then, always remember that there is a saint in all of us. Oh mama, that was a long one, but we are finally done. If you managed on sticking through the end card, thanks for watching the whole thing. This is probably like my longest video ever, probably the longest video in this retrospective already. I don't know if anything's gonna top the length of this video, but you know what? I still appreciate you watching the whole thing. It really means a lot to me. And thank you so much for also watching the previous video as well. If you haven't seen that one yet, though, I recommend you do. It's a lot of fun. I definitely do enjoy my time talking about the series and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, if you enjoyed this, make sure to watch part 1 or my video on the first Saints Row game. Or if you're really curious about some of my other content, you can definitely check out some of my other videos as well. I review video games for a living besides Saints Row, so, you know, it's a lot of fun. And, you know, make sure to remember to hit subscribe, ring that bell icon to get notified when I upload a new video, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. With that said, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time when I talk about Saints Row the Third. Thanks for watching.